Hey folks, and welcome to the third and final day of Developer Days 2023 here in Stockholm. So we had a packed 3 days. I think everyone is tired. I know I am, but I'm here for you. And we're going to go through a summary of some of the things we covered today and talk about where you can get further information. So joining me first is Allan from Telia, and he had a really cool session, kind of talking a bit about how as much things change, they stay the same. As you can tell by the hairline, I've been in IT for many, many years, and it always seems like there's just a pendulum where things go from one extreme to the other and come back again. So Allan talked about his journey where things used to be simple, and then kind of got complicated, and then kind of got simple again. So, Allan, I guess first question, was it really a circular thing, or is it, things are maybe complicated, but now easier to do than they were before?
There's definitely a bit of both. I mean, some of the perspectives also comes from I started out as just the user of automation, right? When I started out in 2006 as a part-time helper in a call center, and we had a provision button that did everything, I saw that as a user, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't know what was going on behind the stage here, right?
Sure.
For all I knew, it could be a 100-man operation running that single button, right? And of course, that was also a simple network. So, of course, the complexity is high, and that's why we haven't seen so much automation, or we haven't come as far with automation as some of the simpler networks have. But now we have the tools to do simple again. So, of course, there is something about we have the tools to do them simple now. But it's always a journey. It gets simpler, but the more we explore and the more corner cases we get, the more complexity we are exposing to ourselves as developers. But we still have to remember to present a simple thing back to the users so they don't experience all the complexity that we are dealing with as writers of automation.
Absolutely. So I guess that brings up the question, as we've gotten better tools over the years, are we chasing more complicated problems?
Maybe. It's a good question. I think we are able to do more, mm-hmm. and we want to do more. And since our solutions have always been evolving year after year after year, the requirements for the automation has also gotten a bit higher, I think. So maybe the complexity is just a consequence of how we are building our services these days.
Sure, but I think your original point was very good. As complicated as on the back end, job one should still be to keep it simple and straightforward on the front end.
Yeah.
So inevitably, are we going to swing? Is the pendulum going to swing again? What do you see the next wave?
It's a good question. I think we're seeing more and more trends towards keeping it simple and exposing APIs and exposing simplicity to the users. So I think we'll be staying on a simple track for a while now. I'm not sure what direction the pendulum could swing to here. Of course, we'll have more and more environments to integrate with, but we'll also have more and more sort of single pane of glass and multi-vendor tools. So I think we'll stay with things that expose simple APIs but have a lot of complexity in the back end.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, we got AI coming. Mm-hmm. We've got things like models and netconf and stuff which have been kicking around, which suddenly have started to gain some traction. So who knows?
I mean, there's a lot to be said about simplicity and to whom, right?
Sure.
Because one of the systems I replaced as part of my big brownfield project was really not a very clever system. It didn't have any intent-based anything, or when it did its changes in the network, it would start by wiping everything out and then replacing it with a new configuration. And that's a significantly lower value than what you get with a proper intent-based netconf and all that system. But to the users, it worked because it was at a stable point. So when you replace that with an NSO installation that is still in development, you're not necessarily delivering as high of a value to the users as you would otherwise. So it takes a while for you to actually mature your installation to a point where the users will actually see that improvement that you as a developer instantly perceive when you start working with tools like NSO, for example.
Okay, that makes sense. So taking a step back, as a professional, how do you prepare for this change, right? There's constant shifts in direction and strategy. How do you make sure you stay relevant and stay on your toes? What are some of the tricks that you use?
Yeah, I think automation itself is still one of those sort of frontier fields. We are still moving the boundaries. We're still doing cool stuff and providing a lot of value to our employers. So I'm not too nervous about that. And I'm not too worried about the industry as a whole either, because in my experience, there's a place for all kinds of engineers in all the automation projects I've been, whether you're able to develop software or not. Just being an expert in your field it has an extremely high value here.
Yeah, I agree. I think stay curious is one thing, and I think the pie chart I think the Telefonica guys had, what kind, how can we do this better?
Yeah.
Is a thing that's good to be constantly asking yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there is also a thing about how we design our services now, because we have to think automation into how we design our services. I really liked the keynote we had on the first day here, with the expression that every engineer sets their mark on the network, which is absolutely true. I used to phrase it like there's 1.5 standard per engineer when you're dealing with configuration, and that's also kind of two aspects of the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But when we're designing our network services, we now have to think how well does this automate? And I think that's the new perspective that people have to bring in, have in mind when they're doing the work.
Yeah, I was on in one of the breakouts, I was talking to someone, and they were saying, we can't deploy something in a network until we can show it can be automated, which I thought, that's some enlightened thinking. Not everyone does that, but I'm glad at least people are starting to think that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's it for me. So thank you for your time. It was a good, quick conversation, and you can check out his full session on YouTube. Should be posted shortly.
Yeah,
thank you, Allan.
Thanks for having me.
So while we switch out guests, as with everything, we will have things posted on YouTube. We'll have the long-form videos available now. By the time you see this, we'll have everything else posted. Over time, we'll cut them down into shorter videos for each particular session. All the associated slides and PDFs and those kinds of things go to the NSO Developer Hub and find them there. So switching to one of my more entertaining sessions today, the Telefonica guys showed you can do cool stuff and have fun at the same time. So thank you guys for setting that mark. So one of the questions I saw that we didn't get to on stage, you said you had a team of 15 people. And folks were curious, so what's the mix and what's the background of your team? Is it all developers? Is it a mix of skills and technologies? Is it pretty homogeneous?
Okay, so
yeah, let me say something.
Victor.
Yeah, sure. In our team we have a lot of diversity in general, from technologies and everything from the start. In the beginning, the team was around 9-8 people, I think. Telecommunication engineer, informatics, also industrial people. I mean, very diverse sectors. And lately, we're more in the developer people.
Okay.
The new people is just developing stuff. But also, is common, the transversal knowledge in the team is about networking. We have certification with Cisco, CCNA and stuff, and other certification with other vendors.
Okay.
So it's like a mix between technology in develop matter and also networking knowledge.
Cool. And I got to believe that kind of diversity helps you build well-rounded solutions, well-rounded test plans and those kinds of things. So talking about test plans, so I was really happy to say, hey, we put some time and effort into testing, because I think that's the thing that's on the least, we saw from the hands in the room, that's like the least favorite thing for people to do. So I'm glad you made that point. And you have a very impressive set of testing strategies. So what's next? Are you pretty happy with where it is? Are there, is a set of functionality or capability in your test tooling that you're looking to invest in next?
Well, the market is continuously evolving, so we are looking forward to improve our current solutions. We do have more solutions as the one that we presented today, but we're looking forward to have one solution that covers all our testing purposes.
Okay.
So we want to consolidate testing in one solution. So this is being a step-by-step process that will take us maybe a couple of years. We are seeing that Cisco, especially the customer experience team, is beginning to offer absolutely end-to-end testing solutions. So maybe we should give a look at those and begin thinking of how to evolve our current solutions to a more end-to-end solution that covers all the testing that we need.
Okay, cool. So I'll ask the selfish question: what can we be doing? What can my team be doing to help make that easier?
Okay, so Victor, would you like to? That's for me also.
Yeah. Let's go.
That's a very good question actually, because Cisco is always worried they are always asking the customer, what could I do? What could I offer you? But the customer usually don't knows what it needs. That's a very common thing if you're aware.
Yep. But you guys seem very opinionated on your testing, so I figured this is a good question to ask.
So in our case, what we're looking from Cisco side is for this integrated solution that I believe that it already exists.
Okay.
So if the things continue along that line, we will be good to go. Probably we will grab it.
Okay, cool. We'll keep talking and see where that goes. So final question for me. You talked about customer integration and folks being able to like change parameters on the service models and adjust bandwidth or those kinds of things. Do you continue to see doing more of that? Is that a big area of traction for your customers in the ability to do that, or is that still relatively rare?
Well, actually, they are not requesting too much, I think, this feature. But yeah, for some particular cases, they need it a lot because this integration we talk about, the change of some parameters, AS or something,
Sure.
is like a very little service, but they call it every time. It's very required. I mean, every day you have a lot of calls for this configuration. So even though it's not a lot, they are not requesting it a lot to deploy, but once it is deployed, it's very consuming. So, well, that's the picture.
Okay, and I think that illustrates the points. You know, sometimes useful automation doesn't have to be big, complicated things. It's simple quality of life types of things that makes everyone happy. You know, it reduces, stupid work for you guys and repetitive stuff, and if the customer gets faster turnaround on the things that they're looking for.
Yeah, for sure. You have also be careful because if you have one automation and the customer has the control to change their network, sometimes they can do an incident or something like that.
Yep.
So you need to control these situations normally a lot, and that's it.
Okay, and so that's a good point. And so how do you manage that? Do you sandbox your customers that way so they only have a limited amount of ability?
Yeah, you're like limiting in the request API.
Okay.
So if you send more than 100 per second, you stop there, and you are waiting for the next things like that in the API requesting. Yeah.
Cool. I think that was it from you guys. Again, really enjoyed your session today. It was very entertaining. We learned a lot of good
Thank
stuff.
you very much.
Thank you for joining me. And
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to the show.
Omar.
Thank you.
And I know for our last guest, we're going to have the folks from CX join us again. A lot of interest in the session we had this morning about the work they're doing. So we're going to dig into that. We started with a 25-minute session and decided that wasn't enough. So here we are with a sequel. Hey guys, welcome to the after party.
Thanks for having us.
So, as I said, we got a lot of good questions about the session this morning. I just want to double click a little bit. A couple of things that struck out. Oh, that's not struck out, but that piqued people's interest. So, you had a room full of people that are all about model-driven automation and those kinds of things, and you started off strong, saying, "Hey, our approach is also model-driven." So, can we double click on that a little bit? And I mean, I was intrigued with it. We start with like this empty model, and by the time we're done, we have this fully populated model. So give me a little bit of idea of what that looks like and how you go about doing it.
So the idea is that we wanted to automate the process and standardize it in a way that will be, we'll be able to build this data model that can be used and extended from customer to customer, right? So the idea is that we want to have the digitized delivery, not only from implementation of changes or deployment, but also from customer requirement gathering, the design and the verification and validation of this configuration, right? So it's kind of the declarative fashion of, for example, Terraform, when you declare how you want to see the network or how you want the network to look like, right? This is the same way we are trying to build the data model that will be used per domain, and this can be replicated from customer to customer without, and saving time for operation team and development team to focus on inventing more than replicating or copying what have been done in previous projects.
Cool. And I assume these are models, the schemas are exposed to the customers as well, so they can write, they can write against the models and use them for their own purposes as well.
Indeed. So the intention of this data model is also that the customer will be able to consume it and run operational tasks on it and use it as part of their own documentation.
Oh,
So it's a living thing.
So that's cool, and I like the idea. It's you're accumulating best practice and wisdom along the way as you go from customer to customer. So,
and by the time we are enhancing these data models, right? So we are not going to change data model from a customer to customer. It will be one data model as much as we can per domain, and then we are going to enhance by time until we reach 100% the generic data model. Yeah.
I like that because a lot of times, one of the questions my team gets is how do we do this, and we always give them the satisfying, well, it kind of depends answer, which isn't really all that satisfying. So this is good. This is a good counterpoint. Okay, this is these models represent some accumulated knowledge across the things, and it's it may not be the right thing, but it seems like this is a starting point. It saves a bunch of time, and then tweak as necessary.
Indeed, we augment models all the time, right? So if they're not fit for purpose, so
absolutely. So the second thing, I have to go back to my notes. That's that because I had to busily unlock my iPad while you were talking. So the second thing was this whole the CI/CD workflow that you laid out. You had this plan, update, verify, deploy. Which seemed like a really cool cycle, and you had some tools mapped underneath it. So a little bit about how you, how you deploy that. I mean, we talked earlier this morning about, you'll meet the customer where they are. So if they have some pieces of that, you'll build on top of what they have, or if they don't have anything, then you've got things ready to go. How do you pick your tools? You talk about Ansible and Terraform and NSO for the deploy piece. Can you maybe a little double click on what that looks like? And I guess people were wondering, is there an actual workflow tool that drives this, or is this more conceptual workflow? And how do you move between the different stages?
Yeah, so you want to take that?
Well, so we have been looking at what are we already using Cisco internally, what are the customers using, and there's a consensus of tools that is out there, right? And then we just basically picked what is fit for purpose. The thing is that the tooling is not too much, is not the important thing, right? Because the tooling might change eventually as well. What is persistent is the concept of the data model, and we want to evolve the data model. And then, we're using Jenkins, we're using open source software, we're using Terraform, Ansible, some custom CX built things, but that might change. And again, if the customer has something that we haven't foreseen there, or they want to swap a component or whatever, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. So basically, the workflow is not something else apart from the normal Jenkins pipeline, right? So we have Jenkins pipeline. It is split into different stages, starting with plan, verification, implementation, deployment, and so on. So this is the same concept, right? We're using Jenkins. This is our workflow. This is the business processes or the normal flow of implementation, and how we can standardize each and every of these stages throughout the project delivery life cycle. Yeah.
Cool. So I think you made a good point. I think that the logos are almost secondary, right? They're to make people feel comfortable that, okay, there's stuff that you're familiar with, that we can build this. But really, it seems like the magic, if you will, is kind of the process and the thinking for each of those squares, and then, what are the exit and entry criteria for each of the phases, and those kinds of things. So that's cool. So then, also, I think the other thing is you leave a customer with a fully realized system that they can turn the crank themselves and go forward, and kind of run it themselves and handle the care and feeding. Do you see? And I know this is relatively a new offer, so I'm not sure if you can answer the question or not. Do you see customers saying, "Hey, I got this. I'm going to run with it," or they kind of want the safety blanket of, "Okay, I understand what's going on, but you guys run it for me. It's a little bit better."
We're running it with a couple of customers, so it's a mixture, right? So some are more careful, some are more experienced, some already have full confidence because they have been using it for a longer time. So it's the broad variety of everything, basically.
Okay. So really, it's up to the customer's comfort level what they want. They can totally run it themselves. They can say, "Here,
I believe this is normal behavior that we have in most of our projects, right? So the CX team, once they engage with the customer, once the customer have the confidence that they can take this forward alone, then we will be in supporting mood, right? But at the beginning, I believe we are carrying out most of the heavy lifting until the customer is having more confidence and understanding of these systems, and they can run it alone.
Yep. And you made an important point, which is the point I'm going to close on. You always see me rant about time to value, and I think this is one of the biggest values, right? You bring the pre-built models, you have this methodology, you're bringing in learning from, pre-existing learning. It really does, it seems to me, cut the time to value between when a customer decides I want to do this and the time they get some measurable results that they say, okay, this is cool. I'm glad I did this.
Yep.
Okay, thanks guys. Thanks for coming up here.
Thanks.
It was good to kind of dig into the details a little bit more.
Thank you, Omar.
Oh, you're free to go.
Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you.
So, for folks still watching, thank you for sticking with me for 3 days. This was a great event. There's a lot of good content out there, so I highly suggest you head to YouTube, go through the weekly, go through the daily tracks, look at the summaries. Head to the developer hub in a couple of days, and we'll have things broken down into bite-sized chunks. So, have a good rest of your day. I'm going to go find some place to go take a nap. Take care.